The subway delay cost me 12 minutes. I burst through the employee entrance of Lombardi's, my uniform blouse still unbuttoned at the collar, my hair escaping its careful twist. The kitchen was a controlled chaos of sizzling pans and shouted orders, but the moment I appeared, everything stopped. "Vivian," Marco's voice cut through the noise, sharp as a blade. "My office, now." My stomach dropped. I was already on thin ice after taking last Thursday off for my mother's hospital appointment. I couldn't lose this job, not when the latest bill from Mount Sinai sat unopened in my purse, the number on the envelope making my chest tight every time I thought about it. Marco's office was barely larger than a closet, smelling of espresso and stress. He closed the door behind us, and I noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he straightened his tie. "Table 12, he said, not meeting my eyes. "VIP party, 8 guests, your lead server." I blinked. "That's not my section. Elena's been reassigned." He finally looked at me, and what I saw there made my throat constrict. Fear. Marco was afraid. "Listen to me very carefully, Vivian. These men, they're associates of the owner. You keep your head down. You smile. You serve. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't ask questions. You don't make mistakes." "Who are they?" His jaw worked. "People who don't like mistakes." Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. He handed me a leather-bound menu, the special one reserved for guests we never charged. My fingers trembled slightly as I took it. "Vivian." His hand caught my wrist, gentle but insistent. "I need this job too. We both need to be invisible tonight. Understand?" I nodded, swallowing hard. Invisible. That had become my superpower these last 8 months. Ever since I'd come to New York with nothing but a suitcase and $2,000, I'd perfected the art of taking up no space. No eye contact with men on the subway, no opinions during staff meetings, no problems, no drama, no trace. Just work, rent, hospital bills, and the crushing weight of being utterly, completely alone. I smoothed my blouse, tucked the loose strands of dark hair back into place, and pushed through the kitchen doors into the dining room. Lombardi's was beautiful tonight. Candlelight flickered across white linen, casting shadows that danced against exposed brick walls. The air smelled of garlic, wine, and old money, the kind that bought silence as easily as champagne. Table 12 sat in the far corner, partially concealed by a decorative partition of frosted glass and wrought iron. The most private table in the restaurant. I'd never served it before. My heels clicked against the hardwood as I approached. 8 men in suits that cost more than my annual salary sat around the table, their conversation a low murmur of Italian and English. But as I rounded the partition, ready to introduce myself with my practiced smile, one man looked up, and everything stopped. He sat at the center of the table, not the head, because it was round, but somehow unmistakably the center of gravity. White suit jacket, tailored so precisely it seemed painted onto his broad shoulders. Dark hair swept back, revealing a face that belonged on Renaissance sculptures. Sharp jaw, full mouth, olive skin. Tattoos crawled up his neck from beneath his collar, dark ink against golden skin, disappearing into his hairline. But it was his eyes that pinned me in place. Dark, assessing, cold as winter granite. Eyes that had seen things I couldn't imagine and had stopped being surprised by anything years ago. He held a glass of red wine, suspended halfway to his lips, and he was looking at me like I was an equation he was solving in real time. "Good evening, gentlemen." My voice came out steadier than I expected. Professional. Invisible. "I'm Vivian, and I'll be taking care of you this evening. May I start you with any drinks, or would you prefer to see the wine list?" I moved around the table, pen poised over my pad, taking orders with mechanical efficiency. Prosecco, Negroni, whiskey neat, Pellegrino. Each man gave his order without really looking at me, except him. Lorenzo Costello. I didn't know his name yet, but I would learn it soon enough. When I reached his seat, I kept my eyes on my notepad, waiting. McAllen, 30-year. His voice was low, textured like smoke and velvet. Neat. I wrote it down, nodded, turned to leave. You're new. I stopped, glancing back. 3 months, sir. His head tilted slightly, dark eyes tracking across my face like he was memorizing something. You look tired. The observation was so unexpected, so personal, that I forgot to be invisible for half a second. Our eyes met, and something flickered in his expression. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition of something he saw in me that I didn't want anyone to see. Long week, I managed. Then I escaped before he could say anything else. In the bar area, I gripped the edge of the counter, taking a breath. My reflection in the mirror behind the bottle showed exactly what he'd seen. Shadows under my eyes, skin too pale, the exhausted thinness of someone who chose between groceries and subway fare. Get it together, Vivian. I delivered the drinks without incident. The men had begun discussing something in rapid Italian, their voices low and urgent. I caught fragments. Familia, contratto, Sicilia, but didn't let my face show understanding. Invisible. I was clearing their appetizer plates when my phone vibrated in my apron pocket. I ignored it. It vibrated again. Then a third time. The emergency pattern. My mother. Ice flooded my veins. Last month it had been pneumonia. Before that, complications from her medication. Each time, the bills grew. Each time, she assured me through tears that she didn't want to be a burden. Each time, I lied and said everything was fine. The phone buzzed again, insistent. I glanced at the table. They were deep in conversation, papers spread between them now. Voices intense. I took 2 steps toward the partition, turned slightly away, and answered, with my voice barely above a whisper, Pronto? My mother's nurse responded in rapid Italian. Emergency. Difficulty breathing. They'd moved her to ICU. Did I have the insurance authorization number? Could I come? Mamma mia, I breathed, my free hand rising to cover my mouth. Quanto è grave? How bad is it? The nurse's voice softened with sympathy, but her words were clinical, stabilized, but serious. They needed to run tests. More tests meant more money I didn't have. Sì, arrivo appena posso. Yes, I'll come as soon as I can. The lie tasted bitter. Boston was 4 hours away, and I couldn't afford to miss work. Grazie, lo so. La prego di dirle che la amo. Thank you. Please tell her I love her. I ended the call, my thumb lingering over the screen, blinking hard against the burning in my eyes. When I turned back toward the table, the entire room was silent. 8 men stared at me. But Lorenzo Costello's gaze was different now, sharp, focused, like a predator that had just spotted movement in tall grass. His head was angled slightly, eyes narrowed, and something in his expression had shifted from casual observation to active interest. He'd heard me, heard the Italian flowing from my mouth like a native speaker. Heat flooded my face. Mi scusi, I apologize for the interruption, gentlemen. I slipped the phone back into my pocket with shaking hands. May I bring you anything else? Your entrees should be ready shortly. No one answered immediately. The man to Lorenzo's right said something in Italian, something I pretended not to understand, and Lorenzo raised one hand slightly, silencing him without looking away from me. Your accent, he said quietly, in perfect Italian. Da dove vieni? Where are you from? My heart hammered. My mother is from Abruzzo, sir, but I was born here. I switched back to English, rebuilding my invisible walls. I'll check on your entrees. I fled before he could ask anything else. The rest of the dinner passed in agonizing slow motion. Each time I entered their space, Lorenzo's eyes tracked me. When I leaned between 2 men to place a dish, I caught the scent of his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. When I refilled his whiskey, his fingers brushed the glass at the same moment as mine, and the brief contact sent electricity up my arm. Once, I felt his gaze so intensely that I glanced up without thinking, and found him watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Not quite suspicious, not quite an attraction, something calculating and dangerous and entirely focused on me. I looked away first, always. By the time I cleared dessert plates and brought espresso, my nerves were shredded. It was nearly 11. My shift should have ended an hour ago. I just wanted to go home, call the hospital, and figure out how to make $500 appear from thin air. "Will there be anything else, gentlemen?" I asked, setting down the bill folder, though I knew they wouldn't be paying. Lorenzo picked up his espresso cup, regarding me over the rim. "No." "Grazie." The Italian word in his mouth felt like a test. "Prego." The response slipped out before I could stop it. "You're welcome." His lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. I gathered the last of the dishes and escaped for the final time. In the kitchen, I slumped against the wall, eyes closed, breathing like I'd run a marathon. "You survived." Marco appeared beside me, looking marginally less terrified. "Good. Go home. I'll finish closing." I nodded gratefully, untying my apron. My fingers were numb as I retrieved my coat and purse from my locker, pulled on my thin jacket, and headed for the employee exit. The November wind hit me like a slap, but I welcomed it, cold and real and normal. I started down the dark street toward the subway, already calculating. If I picked up the Sunday brunch shift and borrowed from my security deposit, Vivian, I spun around. A man in a black suit stood 10 feet away, hands folded in front of him. One of the men from the table, not Lorenzo, one of the others, tall, broad, expressionless. "Mr. Costello would like a word with you." My mouth went dry. I'm off shift. I was just heading home." "It won't take long." It wasn't a request. He gestured toward the black Mercedes SUV idling at the curb, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I thought of the hospital bills, my mother's labored breathing over the phone, Marco's fear. Whatever this was, refusing felt more dangerous than complying. I climbed into the back seat. Lorenzo Costello sat across from me in the spacious interior, still wearing his white suit jacket, but his tie was loosened now. He looked relaxed, one arm stretched across the leather seat back, but his eyes were alert, assessing. "Vivian Sterling," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he'd already known it. 26 years old, working at Lombardi's for 3 months. Before that, a different restaurant in Brooklyn. Before that, a brief stay in Boston. He paused. "Your mother, Carolina Sterling, born Carolina Rossi, is currently in Mount Sinai Beth Israel Hospital with congestive heart failure. The bills are," he named a number that made my stomach turn, "and climbing." I couldn't breathe. "How do you—" "I know everything I need to know." He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, close enough that I could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. "You speak Italian, fluently, like someone who grew up hearing it." Your mother needed you to keep the language alive." His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "I understand that." Silence stretched between us. Outside, the city moved past the tinted windows, anonymous, uncaring. "Why am I here?" I finally whispered. Lorenzo sat back, reaching for something on the seat beside him. He placed it on the seat between us. A plane ticket. First class. New York to Rome, departing in 3 days. An envelope. Thick, cream-colored, expensive. And a phone. Sleek, black, new. "I have business in Italy. Sicily, then Rome. 2 weeks. Meetings with people who prefer to speak in their native tongue." His eyes never left mine. "I need someone I can trust to be in the room. Someone fluent. Someone who understands not just the words, but the meaning between them." "I'm a waitress." "You're more than that." He tapped the envelope. $50,000. 25 now. 25 when we return. Your mother's bills will be paid in full before we leave. You'll stay in 5-star hotels, eat at the finest restaurants, and all you have to do is listen, translate when I ask, and keep your eyes open. $50,000. My mother's surgery, her medication, maybe even enough to move her closer to me. And if I say no? Something flickered in his expression, not anger, but acknowledgement. Then you walk away. No hard feelings, though I imagine Mount Sinai's collections department will be less understanding. I looked at the ticket, the envelope, the phone. You've already decided, I said quietly. This isn't an offer, it's a door opening. He leaned forward again, and this time I smelled cedar and danger and something that made my pulse quicken against my will. I've been watching you, Vivian. You've been invisible for so long, you've forgotten what it's like to be seen. But I see you. His voice dropped lower. You're drowning. I'm offering you air. He paused. What happens next is your choice. But we both knew that wasn't true. I picked up the envelope with trembling fingers. Lorenzo's smile was slow, satisfied, dangerous. Brava, he murmured. Good girl. He pulled out his phone, pressed it to his ear, and said 3 words that would change everything. Don't let her leave. The envelope was heavier than it should have been. Paper shouldn't weigh this much, but my hands trembled under the gravity of what it represented. Freedom. Survival. A choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Lorenzo watched me with the patience of a man who already knew my answer. The Mercedes idled quietly, cocooning us from the November cold and the rest of the world. Here, in this leather-scented darkness, only his voice mattered. You'll need a passport, he said, sliding the plane ticket closer. I assume you have one? I nodded numbly. My mother and I had gone to Italy once, when I was 17, before she got sick, before everything fell apart. Good. Pack light. You'll be provided with appropriate clothing when we arrive. His fingers drummed once against his knee, the only sign of movement in his otherwise still frame. The phone is yours. My number is already programmed. You'll answer when I call, no matter the time. How long have you been watching me? The question escaped before I could stop it. His smile was slight, almost amused. Long enough to know you take the 6 train. That you pick up shifts whenever Marco offers them. That you send money home every week, money you don't have. He paused. Long enough to know you're exactly what I need. My throat tightened. A translator. Among other things. His gaze held mine, dark and unflinching. In my world, Vivian, trust is currency. Loyalty is survival. I need someone who has everything to lose and everything to gain. Someone who won't betray me because betraying me would mean losing the one thing they can't afford to lose. My mother. He was talking about my mother. That's, I struggled for the word, manipulation. That's reality. He leaned back, his expression unchanged. I'm offering you more money than you'd make in 2 years at Lombardi's. Your mother's surgery, her medication, a chance to breathe for the first time since you came to this city. His voice dropped lower. What I'm asking in return is 2 weeks of your time and your absolute discretion. I looked down at the ticket again. First class. I'd never sat anywhere but economy, crammed between strangers, counting the minutes until landing. What if something goes wrong? I whispered. Nothing will go wrong. The certainty in his voice was absolute. You'll be under my protection at all times. No one touches what's mine. What's mine? The words settled over me like a brand. I haven't said yes yet. Lorenzo's smile returned, slow and knowing. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a second envelope, this one thinner. He opened it, revealing a single document. A hospital invoice, marked, paid in full. My breath caught. I took the liberty, he said quietly, of making your decision easier. The paper blurred as tears burned behind my eyes. He'd already paid, already decided, already trapped me in gratitude and obligation before I'd spoken a word. You bastard, I breathed. Yes. No apology, no shame, just acknowledgement. I held his gaze for a long moment, seeing him clearly for the first time. Lorenzo Costello wasn't offering me salvation. He was buying me. And the worst part was that I was going to let him. because my mother was breathing easier tonight, because $50,000 meant survival, because being invisible had gotten me nowhere, and maybe being seen, even by a man like him, was better than disappearing entirely. I picked up the ticket. 2 weeks, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Then I'm done. Lorenzo's smile was triumphant and terrifying. Certo, Vivienne. 2 weeks. But we both knew he was lying. 3 days passed in a blur of sleepless nights and second-guessing. I'd called the hospital 17 times. Each time, the nurse confirmed the same miracle, paid in full. My mother cried when I told her I'd be traveling for work. She didn't ask questions. She never did. The black Mercedes arrived at 5 a.m., silent as a hearse. I climbed in with my single suitcase, my passport clutched in sweating hands. Lorenzo wasn't inside, just the same expressionless driver and a younger man in the passenger seat. Both wore suits. Both had the same predatory stillness. "Mr. Costello is already at the airfield," the driver said. Nothing else. We drove through empty pre-dawn streets to a private airstrip in New Jersey I didn't know existed, the kind of place that didn't appear on maps, the kind where no one asked questions. The jet gleamed white against the dark tarmac, sleek and obscenely expensive. Stairs descended like an invitation to another world. At the top, backlit by golden interior light, stood Lorenzo. He'd traded the white suit for black. Dark pants, dark shirt, dark jacket. Only his eyes caught the light as I climbed toward him. My suitcase bumping against my leg. "Buongiorno," he said, taking my bag before I could protest. His fingers brushed mine, deliberate, possessive. "Did you sleep?" "No." "Honest. Good." He guided me inside with a hand at the small of my back. "Lies are dangerous where we're going." The jet's interior was all cream leather and dark wood, but it wasn't the luxury that stopped me. It was the men. 4 of them, scattered throughout the cabin, all armed. I could see the bulges beneath their jackets, the way their eyes tracked my movement with professional assessment. One of them stood as we entered, tall, scarred, with the kind of face that had forgotten how to smile. He spoke in rapid Italian to Lorenzo, something about sicurezza and protocols. Security. Protocols. Lorenzo answered in the same language, his tone casual but absolute. Then he switched to English, his gaze finding mine. "Vivian, this is Marco." He smiled at my expression. "A different Marco. He handles security." The scarred man's eyes swept over me like I was cargoes being inventoried. "She's the translator?" "She is." Lorenzo's hand remained on my back, warm through my thin sweater. "And she's under my protection. Make sure everyone understands that." Something passed between them, an entire conversation in a single look. "Capito," Marco said. "Understood." I sank into a leather seat as the engines roared to life. Lorenzo settled across from me, his long legs stretched out, completely at ease. He pulled out his phone, the kind with encryption software I'd only seen in movies, and began typing. "You'll want to buckle in," he said without looking up. I did, my fingers fumbling with the clasp. The jet lurched forward, accelerating down the runway. Through the window, New York disappeared behind us, the last familiar thing. Lorenzo's phone rang. He answered in Italian, his voice dropping to something cold and sharp. I caught words. Tradimento, conseguenze, familia, betrayal, consequences, family. When he ended the call, his jaw was tight. "What you hear on this plane stays on this plane," he said quietly, his dark eyes locking onto mine. "What you see, what you translate, what you think you understand, it disappears the moment we land. Are we clear?" My mouth went dry. "Yes." "Say it in Italian." "Sì, capisco." "Yes, I understand." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Smart girl." He leaned back, but his attention never left me. "Now tell me, Vivian, are you afraid of me?" I should have lied, Should have said no. But his eyes saw everything, and lies were dangerous. Yes, I whispered. Lorenzo's smile was slow, dark, and satisfied. Bene. Good. Fear keeps you alive. The jet climbed higher, carrying me away from everything I knew, and into a world where fear wasn't a warning. It was currency. We landed in Rome as the sun set, painting the city gold and crimson. 2 black SUVs waited on the tarmac, engines already running. Lorenzo's hand found my elbow as we descended, steadying me, or controlling me. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. The drive to the villa took 40 minutes through winding roads lined with cypress trees. No one spoke. The armed men sat with their hands resting on their laps, eyes constantly scanning. Lorenzo made 3 more calls, each one shorter and colder than the last. When the gates opened, revealing a sprawling stone villa that looked centuries old, my breath caught. Ivy climbed ancient walls, fountains whispered in courtyards, gardens stretched toward hills bathed in twilight. "Welcome home," Lorenzo said softly. But this wasn't home. This was a beautiful prison. A woman waited inside, mid-50s, elegant, assessing. Her eyes swept over my rumpled sweater and bargain jeans with barely concealed disdain. "This is Sofia," Lorenzo said. "La mia stilista." His stylist. "She'll handle your wardrobe. Everything you need will be provided." I brought clothes, not the right clothes. His tone left no room for argument. He turned to Sofia, switching to Italian. "Something elegant, but understated. She needs to blend in at dinner meetings. Nothing that draws unnecessary attention." Sofia nodded, circling me like I was a mannequin. She spoke rapidly, measurements, colors, fabrics, while I stood frozen. "Tomorrow," Lorenzo said to me, already moving toward the stairs. "Tonight you rest. Your room is the 3rd door on the left. Don't leave the villa without security." He disappeared before I could respond. My room was larger than my entire apartment in Queens. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked gardens, a 4-poster bed draped in white linen, marble bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, and no lock on the door. I tested the handle 3 times, my heart sinking further with each turn. Of course there was no lock. Lorenzo controlled everything, my location, my clothing, my movements. A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. A young woman entered carrying a tray. Pasta, wine, fresh bread. "Buonasera," she murmured. Setting it on the table, her eyes darted away from mine. "Grazie," I replied. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Julia." "Do you work here long?" Her hands twisted in her apron. "Si, 3 years." She glanced at the open door nervously. "You should eat. Il padrone doesn't like when guests skip meals." Il padrone, the master. "Julia," I said carefully. "What kind of man is he? Lorenzo?" Her face went carefully blank. "A powerful man, a dangerous man." She moved toward the door, then paused. "But fair, signorina. If you follow the rules, you'll be safe." "And if I don't?" She met my eyes finally, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. "Non chiedere." Don't ask. After she left, I stood at the window watching armed men patrol the gardens. Beautiful, secure, trapped. I'd traded one cage for another. This one just had better furniture. That night, I heard voices through the walls, Lorenzo and someone else, speaking in sharp Italian. I pressed my ear to the stone, catching fragments. "Your father's mistakes. The Rossi family still wants blood. She doesn't know who you really are." My heart stopped at that last part. The voices faded, footsteps receding down hallways. I stood in the darkness, realizing I'd entered a world where everyone knew Lorenzo's story. Everyone except me. And that ignorance might be the most dangerous thing of all. I called my mother at dawn when the villa was still quiet and the guards changed shifts in the garden below. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, her voice thick with sleep and medication. "Mama," I whispered, curling into the window seat overlooking the Italian countryside. "Come stai? How are you?" "Vivian, tesoro mio, my treasure." She coughed, that wet, rattling sound that haunted my dreams. "I'm better. The new medication is helping. The doctors say..." Another cough. "They say the surgery might not be necessary after all." Tears blurred the sunrise. "That's wonderful, Mama. Where are you? Your voice sounds far away." I glanced at the door, remembering Lorenzo's warnings. "I'm traveling, for work. I told you, remember?" "Si. A pause, and then softer. "You sound tired, Piccola. Are they treating you well?" I thought of armed guards, encrypted phones, whispered threats in hallways. "Yes, very well." "You're lying to me." She'd always been able to hear it in my voice. "But that's okay. You've been lying to protect me for years now. I'm not foolish, figlia mia. I know the bills were crushing you." My throat constricted. "Mama, whatever you're doing, whoever helped us, just promise me you'll be safe. Promise me you'll come home." The words caught in my chest. Could I promise that? Did I even know if Lorenzo would let me leave? "I promise," I lied. "I love you. Ti amo tesoro. Always." The call ended, and I sat there with the phone pressed to my chest, trying not to shatter. "Your mother?" I spun around. Lorenzo stood in my doorway, dressed in a charcoal suit, hair still damp from a shower. How long had he been watching? "I didn't hear you knock," I said, wiping my eyes quickly. "I didn't." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "You're crying." "I'm fine." Bugiarda. Liar. He crossed the room slowly, deliberately, until he stood before me. "What did she say?" "Nothing. Just..." My voice cracked. "She thanked me. For the surgery. For the medicine. She doesn't understand what I had to do to save her." Lorenzo's hand rose and I flinched instinctively, but his touch was gentle when it came, fingers brushing away a tear on my cheek. "You did what any daughter would do. There's no shame in that." His tenderness was somehow more dangerous than his threats. "My mother died when I was 16, he said quietly, his thumb still resting against my jaw. "Cancer. I watched her waste away for 2 years while my father refused to pay for treatment. Said it was God's will. Said she wasn't worth the expense." I stared at him, seeing something raw beneath the cold exterior. "The day she died, I swore I'd never let money decide who lives and who suffers." His eyes met mine, dark and haunted. "So I understand why you said yes, Vivian. I understand what desperation looks like." "Is that why you chose me?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Because you knew I couldn't refuse?" "I chose you because you're exactly what I need." His hand dropped away, leaving my skin cold. "But I keep you here because I understand what it means to love someone enough to destroy yourself for them." He turned toward the door, then paused. "Sophia left dresses for you. We have dinner with business associates tonight. You'll translate. Stay close to me." "Lorenzo." He looked back, something unreadable in his expression. "Thank you," I whispered. "For my mother, even if you used it to trap me." His smile was sad, almost vulnerable. "Prego, Vivian. But remember, I'm still the man who trapped you." He left, and I sat in the morning light, feeling my carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. Because monsters weren't supposed to understand heartbreak. And that made Lorenzo Costello the most dangerous kind. Sophia chose midnight blue silk that clung to curves I didn't know I had, diamond earrings that felt like weights, heels that made me tall enough to almost meet Lorenzo's eyes. "Perfetta," Sophia murmured, stepping back to admire her work. I looked like someone else, someone who belonged in Lorenzo's world, someone who could be dangerous. Lorenzo was waiting at the bottom of the marble staircase, speaking into his phone in clipped Italian. When he looked up and saw me, the conversation stopped mid-sentence. His eyes traveled slowly from my face to my feet and back again, possessive, appreciative, claiming. Bellissima, he said softly, ending the call without breaking eye contact. Beautiful. He offered his arm. I took it, feeling the corded muscle beneath expensive fabric. Tonight you listen, he said as we walked to the waiting car. You translate only what I ask, nothing more. And Vivian, he stopped, turning to face me fully. Some of what you hear will be disturbing. But you show nothing, no fear, no judgment. Understood? My pulse quickened. What kind of negotiation is this? The kind where silence keeps you breathing. The restaurant was exclusive, the kind with no sign and a single door guarded by men in black. We were led to a private room where 3 men waited, older, harder, with eyes that had seen too much violence. Lorenzo greeted them in Italian, his voice smooth as silk over steel. I stood slightly behind him, invisible again, useful. They spoke of shipping routes, percentages, territories, business language that meant something else entirely. Then the oldest man, silver-haired, scarred, leaned forward. We have concerns about your recent activities in Napoli, he said in Italian, assuming I couldn't understand. Our sources say you've been moving products through unauthorized channels. That wasn't our agreement. Lorenzo's expression remained neutral. Your sources are mistaken. Are they? The man's smile was cold. Because we have documentation. Dates, amounts, names of your men who betrayed our accord. A trap. They were accusing Lorenzo of breaking their deal. The scarred man continued, his voice dropping lower. We could take this information to the Rossi family. They're still looking for reasons to justify war with the Costellos. This would give them exactly what they need. Blackmail. They were threatening to expose Lorenzo to his enemies, but then the second man spoke, younger, nervous, and his Italian was rushed, sloppy. The shipment manifests are hidden in the usual place. If Costello doesn't agree to our terms, we leak them tomorrow. My breath caught. The usual place. He'd just revealed where their evidence was stored. Lorenzo's hand tightened, almost imperceptibly, on his glass. He'd heard it too. He turned to me, his face a careful mask. Vivian, translate what was just said. Slowly. The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. My voice was steady, clear. He said the shipment manifests are hidden in the usual place. If you don't agree to their terms, they'll leak them tomorrow. The nervous man's face went white. He'd forgotten I was there, forgot I spoke Italian. The scarred man's eyes narrowed, turning to his associate. Idiota. Idiot. Lorenzo smiled, slow, dangerous, victorious. He stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate calm. Gentlemen, he said in English now, I believe we're done here. My people will retrieve those manifests tonight, and I think we all understand what happens if you attempt to contact the Rossi family. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. The scarred man's gaze shifted to me, cold and calculating. You brought a translator who understands too much, Costello. I brought someone under my protection. Lorenzo's hand found the small of my back. And anyone who touches what's mine answers to me. We left, but I felt their eyes burning into my spine. In the car, Lorenzo made a call. Marco, the manifests are at their warehouse in Ostia. Retrieve them, tonight. He ended the call and looked at me. Really looked at me. You just made yourself invaluable, he said quietly. And in my world, that's the most dangerous thing to be. Because now Lorenzo's enemies knew my face, and they knew I understood every word. The villa felt different when we returned, smaller. The armed guards, who'd been casual before, now watched me with sharp attention. I wasn't just Lorenzo's translator anymore. I was the woman who'd exposed his enemy's weakness. That made me valuable. That made me vulnerable. Lorenzo disappeared into his study the moment we arrived, his phone already pressed to his ear. I stood in the marble foyer in my midnight blue dress, suddenly aware of how exposed I was. How many people know my face now, my value? Marco appeared at my elbow, silent as death. You should rest, Signorina. Tomorrow will be complicated. Complicated how? His scarred face revealed nothing. The men from tonight? They have friends, family. You embarrassed them, made them look foolish. He paused. People have died for less. Ice flooded my veins. Lorenzo said I was under his protection. You are. But protection only works if you stay where he can see you. Marco's eyes were hard, honest. Don't leave the villa without security. Don't trust anyone except Il Padrone. And Signorina? He leaned closer. Don't mistake his protection for affection. Lorenzo Costello protects what's useful to him. The moment you're not... He left the sentence unfinished. He didn't need to complete it. I found Lorenzo in his study an hour later, still fully dressed despite the late hour. Papers spread across his desk, maps, manifests, photographs of men I didn't recognize. He looked up when I entered, his expression unreadable. You should be sleeping. Marco said I'm a target now. I stayed in the doorway, maintaining distance. Is that true? Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, studying me. Yes. Because I helped you? Because you're mine. The possessive edge in his voice made my stomach tighten. And my enemies attack what I value. I stepped inside, closing the door. I'm not yours. I'm your employee, your translator. There's a difference. His smile was dark, knowing. Is there? He stood, rounding the desk with predatory grace. You wear clothes I bought, sleep in a bed I provided, eat food at my table. Your mother breathes because of my money. He stopped close enough that I could smell cedar and smoke. Tell me, Vivian, how are you not mine? You're right. My voice shook but held steady. You bought me, with my mother's life, with money I couldn't refuse. But that doesn't mean I belong to you. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or challenge. No, he agreed softly. It means you owe me, and in my world, debts are paid in loyalty. His hand rose, fingers brushing my jaw the way he had that morning. But you're not just an asset anymore, Vivian. You're a liability. My enemies now know you understand everything. That makes you dangerous, to them and to me. Then let me leave. The words escaped before I could stop them. You have the manifests. The deal is protected. You don't need me anymore. Lorenzo's thumb traced my lower lip and my breath caught. But I want you. The admission hung between us, raw, honest, terrifying. That's not part of our agreement, I whispered. No. His other hand found my waist, pulling me closer. But agreements change, and you feel it too, this thing between us. He was right. God help me, he was right. I felt the magnetic pull, the dangerous attraction to a man who'd trapped me so beautifully I'd almost forgotten I was caged. You're a monster, I breathed. Lorenzo's smile was sad, dark, and devastating. See, but you're the only one who sees the man underneath. His lips brushed mine. Barely a kiss, more like a promise, or a warning. I didn't sleep. How could I with Lorenzo's words echoing in my mind? But I want you. The almost kiss that had left my lips burning with what didn't happen. I'd left his study without another word and fled to my room like a coward. But I could still feel his hands on my waist, his thumb tracing my mouth, the heat in his dark eyes that promised things I couldn't afford to want. When dawn broke, I found a note slipped under my door. Wear the white dress. We have an event. L. Not a request, never a request. The art gallery was beautiful, all soaring ceilings and pristine white walls, displaying works that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Lorenzo moved through the crowd with easy confidence, his hand possessively at the small of my back. People parted for him, whispered, watched. "Stay close," he murmured in my ear. "And smile. We're just two people enjoying art." But the armed men shadowing our every move said otherwise. We stopped before a painting, something violent and beautiful. Red slashes across black canvas. Lorenzo tilted his head, studying it with genuine interest. "What do you see?" he asked quietly. Chaos pretending to be in control, his lips curved. "Perceptive." Lorenzo Costello. The voice came from behind us, sharp as a blade. "Che piacere." What a pleasure. Lorenzo's entire body tensed. His hand tightened on my back, protective or possessive, I couldn't tell. We turned together. The man was younger than Lorenzo, maybe 30, with slicked back hair and a smile that belonged on a shark. Two men flanked him, thick-necked, alert, dangerous. "Dante Rossi," Lorenzo said, his voice carefully neutral. "I didn't know you appreciated art." "I don't." Dante's eyes slid to me, traveling over my white dress with insulting slowness. "But I appreciate beautiful things, and you seem to have acquired something molto bella since we last met." Lorenzo stepped slightly forward, blocking Dante's view of me. "Attento, Dante. You're speaking about my guest." "Guest?" Dante's laugh was cold. "Is that what we're calling them now?" He switched to Italian, his words fast and sharp. "My associates told me about dinner last night, about the translator who speaks our language, the woman who humiliated them." My blood ran cold. He knew. Of course he knew. "She's under my protection," Lorenzo said in Italian, his tone dropping to something lethal. "Which means she's untouchable. Or have you forgotten what happens to people who break those rules?" Dante's smile never wavered. "Your protection only extends so far, Costello. Your father's empire is crumbling. Your allies are nervous. How long before they realize you're not the man he was?" The crowd around us had gone silent, sensing the electricity crackling between the two men. "Long enough to bury anyone stupid enough to test me," Lorenzo said quietly. Dante's eyes found mine again, and what I saw there made my stomach turn. "Careful with this one, signorina. The Costellos have a habit of destroying everything they touch." He turned and walked away, his men following like shadows. Lorenzo's jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists. I could feel the violence radiating off him in waves, controlled, but barely. "Lorenzo, we're leaving." His hand found mine, fingers interlacing with brutal possession. "Now." But as we walked toward the exit, past the staring faces and whispered conversations, I realized something that terrified me more than Dante's threats. I'd stepped between Lorenzo and his enemy, stood by his side without hesitation, accepted his protection like it was mine to claim. I wasn't translating his world anymore. I was living in it, and there was no going back.